Mabuhay! Welcome to Class 1999's webinar series. Maraming salamat po sa inyong pagdalo. We would also like to thank Class 98 for allowing us to start implementing our homecoming activities 1 year before our Silver Jubilee year in 2024. I hope you will learn a lot from our webinar series and participate in the succeeding events that Class 99 will sponsor leading up to our homecoming in December 2024. Mabuhay po tayong lahat! Mabuhay! Welcome to Class 1999's webinar series. Maraming salamat po sa inyong pagdalo. We would also like to thank Class 98 for allowing us to start implementing our homecoming activities 1 year before our Silver Jubilee year in 2024. I hope you will learn a lot from our webinar series and participate in the succeeding events that Class 99 will sponsor leading up to our homecoming in December 2024. Mabuhay po tayong lahat! Mabuhay! Welcome to Class 1999's webinar series. Maraming salamat po sa inyong pagdalo. We would also like to thank Class 98 for allowing us to start implementing our homecoming activities 1 year before our Silver Jubilee year in 2024. I hope you will learn a lot from our webinar series and participate in the succeeding events that Class 99 will sponsor leading up to our homecoming in December 2024. Mabuhay po tayong lahat!
As we gather for this webinar, which is part of the UPCM Class of 1999 webinar series, let us acknowledge the source of all wisdom and the creator of life. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Our Father, we come to you grateful for this opportunity to expand our knowledge of the many wonders that you have imbued in the human body. Grant us knowledge and understanding so that we may better use our intelligence to bring healing and comfort to our brothers and sisters who are ill. Grant us humility to treat our patients with compassion and love. We pray also for our presenters. May they share with us their expertise with confidence and kindness. We ask all this through your Son, the Divine Physician, Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Sa ngalan ng Ama at ng Anak at ng Espiritu Santo. Amen.
We would like to ask everyone to kindly turn off your microphone and video. Please type your questions in the Q&A chat box. We will try to address all of them in the open forum after the presentation. Evaluation and post-test questions will be available for 1 hour after the initial broadcast. A certificate of attendance will be emailed to you once the evaluation and post-test are completed.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Dr. Christine Joy S. Artiza of the University of the Philippines College of Medicine, class of 1999. I am an ear, nose, and throat specialist and a clinical associate professor at the UP College of Medicine and a medical specialist at the Philippine General Hospital. I am here on behalf of the UP Med webinars team of the class of 1999 to moderate today's webinar. Our topic today is about the standard of care and legal duties of physicians in telemedicine. Before we introduce our speaker, we would like to remind the audience that you can type your questions in the chat box even while the lecture is still ongoing. For today's webinar, we are privileged to have a distinguished alumnus of the UP College of Medicine from the class of 2012. Dr. Lee Edson P. Yarsha is a physician and a lawyer who specializes in public health law. He got his degree in medicine from the University of the Philippines College of Medicine and his Juris Doctor degree from the UP College of Law. Presently, he is the legal expert at the United Nations Joint Program for Human Rights in the Philippines, advising the UN country team primarily on health and criminal justice portfolios. He is also a senior lecturer at the UP College of Law and a lecturer at the UP College of Medicine. Everyone, let us all welcome our very distinguished speaker, Dr. and Attorney Lee Edson P. Yarsha.
Magandang tanghali po sa inyong lahat. Maraming salamat sa Class 1999 for inviting me to present on the topic Standard of Care and Legal Duties of Physicians in Telemedicine. I'd like to welcome colleagues and friends in the medical community who have decided to join us today, to make sure that our practice of medicine is something that promotes the welfare of our patients, but at the same time, we do it in a manner that protects our practice, protects our license. For today's discussion, I want to focus on two important concepts, standard of care and legal duties of physicians. And later on, I hope that we have an opportunity for some question and answer. The practice of telemedicine became very popular during the COVID-19 pandemic. As you would recall, at that time, there were quarantine regulations placed. And so it was difficult for us to set up our clinic practice, our hospital practice, because of the risk of COVID-19 infection. But actually, telemedicine has been present even before COVID-19 pandemic. But because of the developments during COVID-19, the Department of Health adopted the telemedicine practice guidelines, which are also an important reference for this presentation. So after this lecture, if you want to read more about the telemedicine practice guidelines, I'd like to refer you to the Joint Memorandum Circular 2020-001. This was based on the UP Manila document that provided guidance on telemedicine. What is telemedicine? Let's define the practice of telemedicine, and I'll use the definition, the technical definition provided by the Department of Health. Telemedicine refers to the practice of medicine by means of electronic and telecommunications technologies, such as phone call, chat or SMS, audio and video conferencing, to deliver healthcare at a distance between a patient at an originating site and a physician at a distant site. Okay. One important aspect of this definition is an enumeration of the different platforms that you can use for telemedicine. Commonly, when you think of telemedicine, you think of audio or video conferencing. But take note that the definition is broad. It can include phone calls, it can include chat, and it can include short messaging services. So if you do chat via Facebook, if you do messages via Viber, that can comprise telemedicine. The implication is important because if you are practicing telemedicine, then your exposure to liability is present because that is considered a practice of medicine. Now, so that you won't have a hard time understanding telemedicine, there are 3 important principles now, just to guide you. The first is telemedicine is still practice of medicine. Okay, and so all the training that we received during medical school, during your residency training program, during your fellowship and further trainings, those are applicable in the context of telemedicine. Okay, so your guiding principle in telemedicine is, as far as practicable, you employ everything that you've learned in your clinical and medical practice and training. You employ all those standards in your practice of telemedicine. And you're only restricted by the technology. And the most obvious is the limitation in physical examination. But all the other important guidelines that we do in a face-to-face consultation, so as far as practicable, we apply them in telemedicine. The second is that the gold standard for practice of medicine is still a face-to-face consultation. The reason being is you can conduct a full physical examination if you do face-to-face consultation. But there are important instances when telemedicine is preferable because it's more feasible for the patient and it's for the best interest of the patient. As you know, during the COVID-19, telemedicine is a safer platform for our patients, especially the elderly, the immunocompromised. Now that there's no more public health emergency, there are possible scenarios when you would prefer telemedicine. For example, if it's more convenient considering the geographical distance. For example, if it's a follow-up and you know that the issues to be discussed can be addressed within the context of telemedicine. And if the patient prefers telemedicine, that's also an important consideration. So the different considerations there, the factors that you will take into account, the most important thing is look for what is for the best interest of the patient. Okay? Will the consultation do more harm than good if you do it via telemedicine? If it will do more harm than good, then you should advise the patient that we should conduct a face-to-face consultation. Let's say, for example, the patient is complaining of chest pain and you are considering a cardiac event. You would know that the best interest of the patient principle requires that you refer that patient to the emergency room for proper assessment. So there is a clinical discretion that you will have to do in determining whether it's appropriate for telemedicine. The most important guideline is it for the best interest of the patient? Okay. And if you decide to do telemedicine, you need to familiarize yourself with the safeguards and legal protections so that you avoid exposure to any liability. Okay. We begin our discussion on the legal duties of a physician with a very important principle that we have all learned during medical school, that consent is essential to establish a patient-physician relationship. In the case of Kasumpang versus Cortego, decided by the Supreme Court in 11 March 2015, the Supreme Court reiterated the doctrine that when a patient engages the services of a physician and the latter, the physician accepts or agrees to provide care for the patient, that is when you establish the patient-physician relationship. Okay? Please take note that consent requires both the consent, the relationship requires the consent both from the patient and also the acceptance of the physician. So let's go to the consent of the patient. How do we secure the consent of the patient? We do that by following the doctrine of informed consent. This doctrine has been explained by the Supreme Court in the case of Lee versus Soliman, decided in 7 June 2011. Okay? I will read this very closely because this doctrine is important. Okay? According to the Supreme Court, the doctrine of informed consent pertains to the duty of a physician to disclose what a reasonably prudent physician in the medical community, in the exercise of reasonable care, would disclose to his patient as to whatever grave risks of injury might be incurred from the proposed course of treatment, so that a patient exercising ordinary care for his own welfare and faced with a choice of undergoing the proposed treatment or alternative treatment or none at all, may intelligently exercise his judgment by reasonably balancing the probable risks against the probable benefits. Okay? This is the foundation of a physician-patient relationship. As a doctor, we have a legal duty to inform the patient of all the possible risks weighed with the possible benefits of entering into a patient-physician relationship. And in the context of telemedicine, we should also include the risks involved in relation to telemedicine. And we will go through the specifics of that in a bit. But broadly, you would know that telemedicine would have restrictions. In particular, the limitation in physical examination, probably the limitation in terms of immediate referral for laboratories, or a complete assessment of the patient, as we know in clinical practice. So there are limitations. And for us to secure the informed consent of a patient within a telemedicine context, we need to inform the patient of those restrictions. Now, under the Department of Health guidelines, there are specific items that the patients should know before consenting to a telemedicine consultation. Okay. The first is the patient should be aware of how telemedicine works. So we should inform the patient that telemedicine is an alternative to face-to-face consultation. Okay? Whether it be in the form of a chat-based consultation or an audio or a phone call consultation or a video consultation, the patient should know that the ideal setup is a face-to-face consultation and telemedicine is an alternative, considering the different factors that the patient considers important, geography, the possible risk for the patient in terms of immunocompromised patient and their exposure if they do a face-to-face consultation, things like that. But the patient should know how telemedicine works. Okay? I mentioned this already, probably the third time already, but the patient should know that telemedicine has a limitation. And that physical examination will be limited to visual and auditory examination only. In reverse, I'd like to emphasize that telemedicine would still have physical examination. The physical examination would only be limited to what can be seen via the video platform or can be heard, no, via the audio platform. But you still do physical examination during the consultation. There are technology risks and limitations. For example, internet connection problems. The auditory examination might not be as good as if it is an actual in-person physical examination. There might be some issues on privacy. No? As you know, technology is not 100% cyber hacking free. No? So those are some of the risks that the patient might consider as important, privacy considerations. Okay? Now, the fourth aspect of getting the informed consent is required by law. You need to inform the patient that in telemedicine and even in face-to-face consultation, you're also required to do this, that you will get personal information from the patient. And when you process personal information, the law requires us, the Data Privacy Act requires us, that we give the patient an explanation of the intended purpose of why we are getting their personal information. No? The Data Privacy Act requires us also to comply with legal orders when personal information will be secured by a government authority, even if the patient does not consent to it. For example, surveillance mechanism for infectious illnesses. Or let's say the doctor was required to participate in a court proceeding. No? So compliance with legal orders are also allowed, ways of processing the personal information. But the important thing is when we talk to the patient in securing their consent, they know that you will collect personal information for the purpose of healthcare, and that's the intended limitation, and that you will comply with legal orders, if there are other processing of health information required. You also have to inform the patient of the privacy and security measures and concerns. For example, that the platform is a private conversation, or that you have whatever documents that will be processed, they will be subject to security proceedings, such as, let's say, putting password, it will only be accessible to the doctor, things like that. The patient should know that their personal information will be private and secured. We inform the patient as well that after telemedicine, there may be a need to require or to refer the patient to another physician or for care coordination. Let's say for physical therapy, for allied medical care, that may be a possibility. So the patient should be aware that the care will not end after telemedicine. There is a possibility for referral or care coordination. And finally, we inform our patient that they have rights during telemedicine, including that they can withdraw consent anytime. If they feel that they don't want to continue with telemedicine at any point, then they should be allowed to do so without any grave implications to them. Note that many of these actually are applicable even in a face-to-face consultation. The rights of the patient, informing them of this matter, they are all essential components even of our face-to-face or an in-person consultation. Okay. So based on the guidelines, the informed consent should be in written form. Okay. Generally, actually, when you secure, let's say, consent in a hospital setting, there's already a template form that patients just fill out, their informed consent form. And it's similar in telemedicine. I suggest that you do a standard template form. Some of the telemedicine service providers already provide for a template form, and the patients just take an I agree box. That's an easy way to do it. For many of us, let's say we're doing our own private practice, you can also develop your own standard template forms. As I mentioned previously in the previous slide, there are important things that you should include there. So just include everything here, and that the patient should sign at the end that they agree and they have been adequately informed of the different information that are required for telemedicine. Of course, the easiest really is to use a standard template form and just have the patient "I agree," no? Send an "I agree" or sign at the end. No? And that document, you secure it in your safe data storage. So whether it's a folder in your computer that is password protected, no? Or if you have print out, you put it into a safe cabinet. No? Just make sure that it's only accessible to the healthcare team or to you, no? As the primary physician. Okay, so that is the informed consent. Some other permutations, probably you may want a patient to email a template form. If you do not have a platform, they can send it via Viber, or you can explain it. No, you can explain it verbally, and then in a form you will just put there the risks and benefits of the consultations have been explained to the patient, and the patient has agreed. No? And then the important thing is that there should be evidence that the patient agrees to it. No? So their signature is the evidence of that one. So you secure that in the document, in the written informed consent form that you have. Okay. Now, who can give an informed consent? As you know, it should be the patient if they are legally capacitated. No? So the age of majority is 18 years old and above. But if they are below 18 years of age, you should secure the consent of the father or the mother, the parents, no, jointly. The law provides that in case of disagreement, the father's decision shall prevail. No? So we still haven't amended our very patriarchal law, and we hope that our legislators amend it. But for now, the law provides that it's jointly, the father and the mother will agree, but if not, it's the father's decision who will prevail. Then you have the judicially appointed guardian in the absence of the parents. Then you have the surviving grandparent in the absence of the parents or guardian. Then you have the oldest brother or sister of legal age in the absence of the previous substitute decision makers. And finally, the child's actual custodian in the absence of all the others. No? In the case of foundlings, abandoned, neglected, or abused, and other children similarly situated, the heads of, let's say, the hospital, children's homes, orphanages, now they can also be the substitute decision makers. But the important thing is we secure an informed consent. Okay. Let's have some case scenarios that are possibly applicable in the context of telemedicine. So in our first scenario, Miss Jujubee, a 25-year-old patient, used a telemedicine service provider and ticked the "I agree" consent box in a prepared consent form and set an appointment schedule with Dr. Raja Gemini. Dr. Gemini saw the request for appointment in her email and confirmed her availability to see the patient. The patient and the doctor logged in on the agreed telemedicine consultation date. Okay, so the question here is there a patient-physician relationship? So this is a very classic express form of a physician-patient relationship because there's a consent form and the doctor also accepted. No? So when this happens, the standard of care and the legal duties of the doctor will be applicable. No? Another case scenario which may be quite oftenly observed by our physician is this. After the first telemedicine consultation, Ms. Jujubee followed up with Dr. Gemini for clarifications regarding the prescription. And the follow-up is in the form of emails, for example, or text messages. A week after the consultation, Ms. B's symptoms progressed and new symptoms developed. So Ms. Jujubee then emailed Dr. Gemini and asked for new medications. Dr. Gemini declined to answer the email request for a prescription. Okay, so the usual question here is there a patient-physician relationship? What are the legal duties of the doctor? Okay. On the first part, when Ms. Jujubee is following up via email regarding the clarifications regarding the prescription, it will depend on the agreement between the patient and the doctor at the time of the telemedicine consultation. If the agreement and the consensual agreement at the time is that the patient is allowed to send messages via email or via text to clarify the prescription, then that is still covered by the patient-physician relationship. So any advice of Dr. Gemini responding to the clarifications via email or text is still covered by the standard of care. Now, on the second scenario, after symptoms progress and new symptoms develop and Jujubee is asking for new medication, this is covered, and I would suggest that this be done under a new telemedicine consultation. Okay? Remember that it's for the best interest of the patient, and because there are new symptoms that develop, the symptoms progress, and Dr. Gemini is exercising her clinical decision and believes that it's necessary to have a new consultation for that. So this should be explained clearly to the patient, no? That the telemedicine consultation covers only the assessment of the doctor at the time of the consultation. It should be made clear to the patient that it is not a license to continue messaging and texting everything about the patient's illness, and especially if new symptoms develop. No, you explain to the patient that those should be covered by a new consultation, and this should be made clear at the consultation stage. Okay, let's have another scenario. Jujubee, after learning that Dr. Gemini declined the request for medication, she sent a text message to her high school classmate, Dr. Jada Hall. She sent, "Jada, naglalagnat ako. Ano ba magandang inumin dito para gumaling ako?" Dr. Hall replied, "Paracetamol 500 milligrams every 4 hours lang yan para gumaling ka." So the question here, is there a patient-physician relationship? Okay? Now, generally, you need an express consent, no, in the form of a written consent form to demonstrate that a patient and a physician agreed to enter into a patient-physician relationship. But based on this fact pattern, you will see that Jujubee is consenting to be assessed, no, for a medical condition, fever, and is asking for a medical treatment from Dr. Hall. Dr. Hall impliedly agreed with that request for a medical advice. In fact, she said paracetamol 500 milligrams for treatment cure for the patient. Okay? I'd like to caution our practitioners that telemedicine includes text messages. And so for questions such as this, you need to exercise your clinical judgment. Obviously here, it will be below the standard of care for you to simply give paracetamol for a presentation of fever. You don't know the condition, you don't know the etiology, you don't have a working diagnosis for the fever. And therefore, a mere prescription of paracetamol will be possibly more harmful than good for the patient, because that condition might develop. The patient might be septic later on because you were not able to address the root cause of the fever, and the patient can progress to a more debilitating condition. Okay, so word of caution, text messages are a form of telemedicine. And in this particular scenario, it is covered by the standards of care. Now, what could be a good way, no, to answer a question such as this? Because as a practical question, no, some of our friends or some of our relatives might ask, no, if you phrase your answer as an academic answer and you advise the patient responsibly, no, to seek further care, then that could be a sign that you do not accept the patient-physician relationship, but nevertheless, you want the patient to be taken care of. So what's the practical response here? You can tell Jada, it will be best for you to seek medical consultation for a full examination. In any case, in general, for our patients who have fever, we give paracetamol every 4 hours. Okay, what's the difference? The difference is you are not advising Jada on her very specific condition that is applicable to her, but you're only giving an academic answer that in general, when there's fever for patients, paracetamol 500 milligrams is given. Okay. And the other important thing is you referred the patient for an actual medical consultation. Okay. Now, I mentioned that consent is required not just from the patient, but also from the doctors. Under our Code of Ethics, Section 2, Article 2, the Philippine Board of Medicine provides that a physician is free to choose whom he will serve. He may refuse calls or other medical services for reasons satisfactory to his professional conscience. He should, however, always respond to any request for his assistance in an emergency. Once he undertakes a case, he should not abandon or neglect it. What's an important thing as applied to telemedicine? As applied to medicine, please take note that the general rule applies to us. We can reject any request for patient care as long as it complies with our professional conscience. However, if it's an emergency, then we always should respond. But if it's an emergency situation, more likely than not, it is not appropriate for a telemedicine consultation. And so the mandatory directive under the Code of Ethics that we should always respond for cases of emergency might not be applicable in a telemedicine consultation. Okay? But please take note that there are also guidelines in terms of what it means to his professional conscience. No? It shouldn't be arbitrary. It shouldn't be discriminatory. Those are guidelines that we have under the law as well. So let's say if you discriminate a patient because, let's say, the patient belongs to an LGBT community, no, that's a violation of the standards placed under our Code of Ethics. Or if you decline to take care of a patient because the patient is Black, for example, violating the rights of a person against discrimination on the ground of race. No, so on gender, on race, on age, no, all other discriminatory acts that will be violative of our Code of Ethics. No? But in other instances, if it's not discriminatory, if it's not an abusive exercise of the decision of a doctor, then the doctors are allowed to decline. There are many reasons why you would decline. Probably when the patient asks for consultation at 7 p.m. and you know that is family time for you. Or let's say the patient insists on following up always on a Saturday or on a Sunday, or for you it's going to be a difficult case that you cannot handle. You refer the patient to another. You're allowed to do that. In fact, under the law, you don't have to explain the basis for the fact that you decline to enter into a patient-physician relationship. As long as it's done in good faith, then that is acceptable under the law. Once you undertake a case, however, you should not abandon or neglect it. Those are required by the law. So you need to make sure that you provide the necessary medical care and treatment consistent with the standard of care. All right, let's have a case scenario. Juju B was able to set up a second telemedicine consultation with Dr. Gemini. Ms. B was found to be immunocompromised and was advised to receive a booster shot for COVID-19. Juju B insisted that she will just do Suov and that she will take ivermectin, for the typo, as prophylaxis. She also declined to take all other medications as they are not organic and natural. So in this case, as I mentioned, doctor-patient relationship is consensual. And in that case, maybe the physician may terminate the relationship. As I mentioned, it can be terminated for any reason except when it is based on discrimination. And under the legal guidelines, it's not even necessary to give an actual consent, but it would be good clinical practice to explain the objective and factual basis for your decision. So in the previous case, you may want to explain to the patient that you cannot deliver your standard of care because the patient is not trusting the doctor and is in fact not following the medical advice. No, and in such a scenario, you'd rather the patient see another doctor, or if the patient feels that they'd rather follow their own assessment of their condition, then they can do so. They're free to do so. No, it might endanger your clinical practice based on your assessment if you continue the relationship despite the loss of trust of the patient to the doctor. Okay, so now I hope it's clear, no, the scope of consent and informed consent that is essential in the context of a telemedicine consultation. Now let's go to the standard of care. Okay, you already know the standard of care from medical school to your residency training to your fellowship training. The standard of care, as explained by the Supreme Court in the case of Harsha versus Bastan, decided in 15 February 2012, physicians must treat patients according to the standard of care observed by other members of the profession in good standing under similar circumstances, bearing in mind this advanced state of profession at the time of treatment or the present state of medical science. What's an important aspect here that you should take note of as a practicing physician? Okay? Please take note that the standard of care is measured in relation to the practice of other members of our profession in good standing under similar circumstances. In practical terms, this is what we call the locality standard. When we have a medical malpractice case that we handle in courts, usually the court will require an expert witness. The expert witness will explain what would you do, if you are the physician faced with the circumstances. What is the usual practice by other members of the profession? And so it's very important that we are aware of the standard of care as being practiced within our society, as in our community. Some of the evidence here would be in the form of clinical practice guidelines, possibly treatment that are being done and taught to us during our training. Those things will be taken into account in determining what the standard of care is. The court, in many instances, would say that the question of standard of care is a technical question. So it's from the side of the physicians and the community to determine what the standard of care is. There is one important case that I'd like to highlight here. In one case, the court mentioned that in the case of a specialist, like an anesthesiologist, the standard of care by which the specialist is judged is the care and skill commonly possessed and exercised by similar specialists under similar circumstances. The specialty standard of care may be higher than that required of a general practitioner. Okay? What is the implication of this holding by the Supreme Court? If you are a specialist, let's say an anesthesiologist, a cardiologist, a pediatrician, the way the court will assess your practice is based on the standard of care of your colleagues, based on the standard of care that will be practiced by similar specialists. So the court in one occasion mentioned that the specialty standard of care is higher. Now let's go to the context of telemedicine. What are the applicable standards of care in the context of telemedicine? I mentioned this in the introduction, that the standards of care that exist in a face-to-face consultation must be applied as far as practicable in the context of telemedicine. So everything that you've learned in medical school, residency, fellowship, and other training, you need to apply it in the context of telemedicine. So that's a very good guiding principle for us. It's not so foreign and alien in the context of telemedicine. You still do what you know and what you've been trained to do now. The good question that we may ask ourselves, will it do more harm than good if we do a telemedicine consultation? Because if it will do more harm, then the law requires us to refer the patients to face-to-face consultation. Okay? And we need to familiarize ourselves with clinical practice guidelines and our algorithms in telemedicine practice. Different societies might have different guidance. No, let's say the chest physicians may have guidelines for telemedicine. Internal medicine practitioners may also have clinical practice guidelines for telemedicine, and you would want to be familiar with those guidelines. No? In the context of telemedicine, these are the applicable standard of care, following also the guidelines provided by the Department of Health. Okay? First, before the telemedicine consultation, you need to check your technology. No? So check whether your laptop is working, your video is working, your internet connection is working, making sure that the audio is clear. No? You can verify this from the side of the patient. No? Is my audio clear? Am I visible? Can you understand me clearly? Those things are important before the telemedicine consultation. Next, you check the consent. No? Have they sent their consent form? And as I advise, good clinical practice would be followed if you reduce that in a template consent form that includes all the information that the patient should know. So if you have secured the informed consent form, a good clinical practice would be to check medical records previously. No? So one way would be to ask the patient to send to you any medical records they have, or if this is a returning patient, you check the previous medical records that you have on hand. No? So those are guidelines for doctors before a telemedicine consultation. Now, during the telemedicine consultation, we do our usual history and physical examination. I'd like to emphasize that there is still a virtual physical examination. No? Often, the understanding is that history will be the only one taken. Take note that a virtual physical examination is best done when you have an audio-video platform. No? If it's just a phone call, it will be limited to an auditory physical examination. If it's just based on chat, then severely restricting your ability to conduct a virtual physical examination. So you will do clinical judgment depending on the context of the patient. But the ideal would be an audio-visual physical examination in a telemedicine. Okay? There is what we call a website or webside manners. No? So similar to bedside manners, we observe the good clinical practice that we do in a face-to-face consultation. For example, the way a doctor will dress, no, professional attire that is expected of us in a bedside setting. The courteous way of talking to the patient, no? The way that we do eye contact, the way that we listen to the patient, the way that we protect their privacy in a clinical setting, no? Those are things that are important. After telemedicine consultation, you need to clearly explain the management plans. You issue an e-prescription, which I'll discuss very shortly, and you refer the patient as needed. No? So very broadly, if you take a look at this, actually telemedicine is very similar to when a patient will come to our clinic room. No, we observe all those things. The only difference is that you're doing it through a platform. All right. So some specific guidance in the context of telemedicine, how you would conduct a virtual physical examination. One technique could be to ask a patient's relative, no, to assist in vital signs, no, in checking for the vital signs. So when the patient is on the other end of the video platform, no, you might ask the patient to put in the home BP monitor, for example, or if there's pulse oximeter, no, that they can put, or If you would need the patient to raise the hand of the patient or maybe assist in palpation, no, that's also possible. You ask the relative to touch the patient and look at the response of the patient, or ask the patient to explain to you what they are doing. But take note, there are limitations here, but they approximate, or at least they give you more insights, no, in terms of the vital signs. In a telemedicine consultation, you'll also be able to visually examine the eyes, the ears, the nose, the mouth, the throat, and the neck. Let's say for any masses, no? For any possible signs of erythema. Let's say in the conjunctiva, you can ask the patient to expose the conjunctiva. No? Sometimes you can also ask the patient to take a photo if the photo is clear and send it to you so that you can examine it more closely if the video is a bit unclear. No? So you do your visual examination. You can assess breathing, no? The chest and respiration. You can ask the patient to remove the clothing. You can check for possible intercostal retractions. You can even hear if the patient is wheezing, if the patient is coughing, no? Things that you can hear as well. No? You can do visual examination of the extremities. You can ask the patient or the relative to examine the feet, for example, if there will be edema. No? If it's pitting edema, then you can ask the patient to palpate it. No? The same is true with the skin. No? You can ask the patient to turn around so that you can look at the skin of the patient. You can do visual examination of the abdomen, ask the patient to palpate it, or ask a relative to help you in the palpation. That's also possible. You can ask the patient to walk, to stand up, to assess the gait and the posture. You can do your psychiatric examinations as well. So take note, there are many things that you can do in the context of a telemedicine, even if it's virtual. The important thing is, maybe as a society, if you belong to a society, maybe it would be good if you can develop a collective guidance, no, on how to do virtual physical examination based on your practice. Because take note, the guidance says you will be judged in relation to how the other practitioners of good standing in your profession will practice telemedicine as well. Okay? I mentioned that electronic prescriptions may be given to the patient. No? You can also do electronic clinical abstract. No? So put it, you might have a form similar to your clinical abstract in clinics or in hospitals. You can put the patient information, history, physical examination, travel history, your diagnosis assessment, plan of management. So some of the patients may request for this. So you can do that. Electronic prescriptions, based on the previous FDA guideline, there's an explicit recognition that they are deemed equivalent of written prescription. Okay? There's a guidance also that says antibiotics, anti-infectives, and or antivirals must be in separate electronic prescriptions. The guidance for electronic prescription, similar to your physical prescription, is that it should contain the name of the patient, the name of medicines, the dosage, patient instruction, your digital signature, the name of the physician, license number, your PTR, and you secure that in a safe storage folder. Okay. Note, however, that the FDA guidelines on COVID-19 was coterminous with the declaration of the public health emergency. Okay. But based on my opinion, on my assessment, no, electronic prescriptions are still practicable for us and covered by the standard of care. No? In fact, there's no, usually if you do a prescription and then take a photo of that, no, and you send to the patient, that is also an electronic prescription. No? They just don't have the hard physical copy. No? And many of our pharmacies actually accept it. So I would recommend, no, you could do your electronic prescription still, and under our law, no, actually electronic equivalents of our documents, even in the e-commerce apps, that's recognized as equivalent of a written document. No? So I hope that the FDA and the DOH can clarify this, but it is allowed, no, under the general rules on electronic documents. Okay. Now, please take note that as you end your telemedicine, ensure that there's continuity of care. You should properly advise the patient for referral or instructions on follow-up. You should monitor developments in your medical societies because at the time, this advice was very important during the COVID-19, but it would be good for you to know if there are new guidelines on telemedicine, on how your societies practice it. No? And as we go to a new normal, we advocate for telemedicine. Telemedicine can be best for our patient, actually. Now, some practical questions that doctors usually ask whenever I give a lecture on telemedicine. What would be the best platform? Some of the telemedicine service providers can already provide a platform to you, but you can do your own platform determination. It can be via Zoom, it can be via a Viber call, a Facebook Messenger call. The important thing is it is useful for the patient and you. It's user-friendly for both of you. And also the audio and video capacities are there. The platform is secure, and it is privacy enhancing and non-public facing. So that means when you do your telemedicine, you don't do a call in a coffee shop, for example, where everyone can hear the conversation. You should still approximate a private clinic consultation. So it should be in a quiet room. There are no people coming in and out, and the patient's privacy is respected. Okay? A good guiding principle would be something that is comfortable for the patient and the doctor. Please take note that privacy and confidentiality are required by the law. So when you do telemedicine, you need to make sure that there's privacy. And under the Data Privacy Act, we are required to ensure that we have organizational, physical, and technical security standards. What do we mean by this? Organizational, when you have your clinical practice or your group practice, there should be a person called a data protection officer who ensures that the privacy of the patients are protected and the processing of the personal information are protected. If you're a single clinical practitioner, then you are the data protection officer because you're the responsible person for the information of the patient. For physical setup, I told you about the physical setup of your telemedicine. It should be private. You need to have your storage device. Technical would be putting password protection, having antivirus or anti-malware devices, or other privacy measures. They are required under the law. Under the Data Privacy Act, I would like to reiterate that informed consent is necessary. You need to inform the patient of the intended purpose of the information that you are gathering. One example, let's say Dr. Latrice Royal disclosed to his friend, Dr. Manila Luzon, that a certain female political figure who used to be a senator but was detained for drug-related charges will be admitted in the hospital for possible community-acquired pneumonia. What I want to demonstrate here, in this case, there's no revealing or the name of the patient was not divulged. But under the Data Privacy Act, it is not necessary to give a specific personal information. Based on this fact pattern, you would know that this pertains to Senator Laila de Lima. And so if you are not careful, you might violate the privacy of your patient by discussing important information that pertain to that. Okay. One final group of questions that I get is in relation to online promotion. Can we promote our telemedicine practice? According to our code of ethics, we can. Okay, we can promote, but we should not employ agents. We should not recruit and solicit patients. For us, for let's say in internet websites or social media, you can publicize your telemedicine practice limited to informing the patient of your capabilities and qualifications. What are your trainings? What are the special certificates or diplomas that you got? And where your hospital affiliation are, what are the methods for them to seek appointment with you. Those are important aspects of online promotion, which are allowed. But it should be for the purpose of informing the patient. It should not be in a way that is for a profit-oriented way. So if you advertise it, let's say 50% off if you consult to me, because that can be construed as not in line with our code of ethics. So our guiding principle still is what we learn in clinical practice, that medicine is a vocation and not a business. So some principles for the ethical promotion of our practice, it should be not for business. We cannot employ agents. The Supreme Court has ruled that these are unethical. We can have our digital materials to show our testing capabilities. And the test for our promotion is it in a way that promotes our medicine as a vocation and not for profit. Some more concerns: how to deal with chat, SMS, email, and phone-in consultations. As I mentioned, these are covered by the standards of care in telemedicine. So if there's a new person for the first time sending you a message, you need to exercise your clinical judgment. It might be best to ask for a telemedicine consultation in an audiovisual setting or an in-person consultation. Common question: can physicians choose patients for telemedicine? Definitely. Can you decline patients? Definitely. As long as it's not arbitrary and discriminatory. Practical question: how much can I charge for telemedicine consultation? And do HMOs cover telemedicine consultations? Now, this will depend on our clinical practice. The way telemedicine fees are determined is also dependent on how the other practitioners charge. So it will also depend on your level of training in the way that we determine how much we will charge for an in-clinic consultation. Those are the considerations that we also have. I'd like to end with the guiding principle in the Code of Ethics. Whether we do this in an in-person or in a telemedicine concept, the primary objective of the practice of medicine is service to mankind. If telemedicine is the best way to serve mankind, then we should optimize technology. But just make sure that you comply with the legal standards, observe the standard of care, so that we can promote the welfare of our patients and at the same time protect our license as well. I will leave my email address here if you have further questions or inquiry. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Yorsha, for that comprehensive talk. At this point, we'd like to thank our sponsor, Consulta MD. Unfortunately, we will not be able to have an open forum due to the constraints of time. And actually, our speaker has been called to an emergency meeting with the Secretary of Justice, so he will not be able to take questions for today. What we would like you to do is for you to email your questions. For those with questions in the question and answer box, please email your questions to us. Please post our UPCM 99 webinar email on the chat. Oh, I'm sorry. Dr. and Attorney Yorsha is already here.
Hi,
Good afternoon,
po.
sir.
Good afternoon po. Very timely. I just finished my meeting at the DOJ, so I was able to catch the end of my recorded presentation. Happy to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We actually have a little bit of time, but if you'd like, we can answer a couple of questions. And
Sure.
then, yeah, thank you for being here. So, okay, we'll just take it as it was added. So from the Zoom chat, what would be the accountability of a doctor who fails to inform the significance of a follow-up lab result after hospital discharge, normal or abnormal, to his patient during teleconsult? Would the doctor be liable for negligence or omission of duty?
Okay. So there are two aspects here. No, one is the act of the patient. No, and the other is on the side of the doctor. At the end of the consultation, the doctor should properly advise the patient to follow up and to give the results of the laboratory examination. So let's say, for example, the patient did not follow up and there are complications as a result of the failure to follow up. There is what we call contributory negligence in law, which means it's the fault of the patient. That's why um, the complication happened. So if it's by the failure of the patient, then there will be no medical malpractice there. But let's say it's on the side of the doctor. Let's say the lab result is in the custody of the doctor and there is a finding there that requires a follow-up consultation. It is the duty of the doctor to inform or at least seek the patient and inform the patient of that result and maybe request for a follow-up consultation. In any case, the good faith indicator here is you make sure that you do something that promote the best interests of the patient.
Thank you, Doctor. Last question. Do we have the right to ban a rude patient from telemedicine? I am currently working in a telemedicine company. Most patients are rude. Especially when verifying the information from them and asking them questions to assess the CC they placed on the chief complaint they placed on the description. They get mad why we ask so many questions since they already typed the description. But as a nurse, we really have to assess further. We have many nurse participants and attendees because we have CPD units for them. Go ahead, Doctor.
Thank you. Actually, the same clinical practice guidelines, or at least your attitude in clinics, no, that also happens in telemedicine. These questions are not peculiar to telemedicine. You will have difficult patients. You will have patients who ask or at least not be as cooperative, no, with all the questions and history taking that you will do. I would suggest that of course, you do what you've been taught in your training school, know how to handle difficult patients. But if it's at the point that it's not constructive anymore between the patient and the doctor or the nurse in this case, no, from the legal perspective, it's always a consensual relationship. So if it's not working for the professional, and the professional feels that he or she is incapable to continue that relationship, then the professional has the right to refuse to, except, as I mentioned in my lecture, if it's an emergency situation, we have to address that. Or the second is if it's on the basis of discrimination or unfair treatment of the patient, then we will also be held legally liable there. But other than that, you can decline the provision of telemedicine service. And a good way to, as a matter of good practice, is also to refer to others. So you can just say that you cannot continue or you are not able to enter into a patient-professional relationship and refer to another practitioner. By law, you're not even required to explain why. But as a matter of good faith, you can just explain that based on your professional preference, you'd rather that the patient be seen by another practitioner.
Okay, thank you very much. No, thank you for all the questions from the audience. We have many more, so we request again for those questions to be emailed to us so that we can forward them to Dr. and Attorney Yarsha, and we will send back his reply. So thank you, Dr. Yarsha, for enlightening us with your answers. So in summary, I'd like to give 3 points. 1, telemedicine is still practice of medicine, only using a different platform. As such, we as physicians and nurses and health professionals need to perform our core responsibilities, but tailor this to the context of the telemedicine platform. So that includes establishment of a good patient-physician relationship, informed consent, standard of care, privacy and confidentiality, and continuity of care. And from the PMA Code of Ethics, Dr. Yarsha ended, the primary objective of the practice of medicine is service to man. Thank you to our speaker for taking time out of his busy schedule and sharing his expertise with us today. As a sign of our gratitude, we would like to present this certificate of appreciation to Dr. Lee Edson P. Yarsha, Thank you very much, Dr. Yarsha.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And we will request you to answer further questions. May we request our audience to please stay for some reminders. We would like to thank the UP College of Medicine, the Postgraduate Institute of Medicine, the UP Medical Alumni Society, and the UP Manila Information Management Service for their support of this webinar series. And again, thank you to our sponsor, Consulta MD. We are inviting everyone to watch our next webinar on November 23, 2023, Thursday at 12 to 1 p.m., entitled Osteoarthritis Pain, Early Diagnosis and Treatment. Our speaker will be Dr. Oxencio Lawrence A. Lucera Jr. Dr. Lucera is the chair of the Department of Internal Medicine at San Juan de Dios Hospital and is the vice president of the Philippine Rheumatology Association. For those who want to get a certificate of attendance, kindly answer the evaluation form and post-test within the next hour. You can access the link through the QR code posted on the slide or use the URL posted in the chat box. Thank you very much to all our attendees.